You're listening to the Talking Headways Podcast Network.
Talking Mondays. Keep moving on. Keep moving on. Talking Mondays. Keep moving on. Keep moving on. Talking Mondays. Keep moving on. Keep moving on.
Happy Monday. This is Mondays at the Overhead Wire, sponsored by our generous Patreon supporters. I'm Jeff Wood, your host, and joined by Han Solo. That's right, every Wookiee's favorite right-hand man is here to help me with this episode. And as we do when we're Han Solo, I've got some programming notes for Talking Headways coming up. In case you missed it, last week we released an interview with the folks behind the Lancet series on urban design, transport, and health. Definitely go check that out if you get a chance. It was a great discussion with Melanie Billy and Jeff Boeing. Good talk about metrics and a whole bunch of other stuff. And if you have a city that you want to be a part of the next Lancet series, definitely contact them and get in touch. All the notes are in the show notes of the links that you need to go to and all that stuff. So check it out if you get a chance. That episode was really fun to do. This week I have a recording scheduled with Megan Kimball. It'll probably be out in a couple of weeks to talk about our great journalism work on highways and housing and those types of things. Revolution's coming up too, and I'll be there and probably record a couple of episodes at the end of the year. So if you're in Miami and going to Revolution, come say hi. I'm doing numerous things at the conference and hope to see everybody there. I'm even going to be on a panel or interviewing somebody for a session. So looking forward to that as well. And let's see, what else have we got on? Well, just much more. We got a lot of stuff coming up. So, and I think I mentioned a few other things last week, including the wealth of cities. We're going to have a panel discussion with 4 people on that one. And I think we're recording that next week. So we're looking forward to that too in a couple of weeks when that comes out. So lots of good stuff coming. And we try to put together some really cool episodes on different topics, and hopefully folks are enjoying it. Also, I should note that we released our 400th Talking Headways episode recently with 13 clips from shows past, and there was lots of great reaction to that show, and I really appreciate that. Let me know if you all like the clip show, because it might be interesting to do a few more of them on certain topics that we've had a number of different guests on. So I can see like a bus rapid transit episode or a dedicated lane episode, one on walking, on accessibility overall. There's a number of folks, broadband even, we've had a couple of episodes on that. So we can maybe chop up a couple of the really good parts of the episodes and put them together kind of like a clip show, a little smaller than this last one. I think this last one was like 2 hours, which is a little bit long, but it was also the 400th episode. So I was trying to get a lot of stuff in there, even though I missed a lot of shows that I really, really loved that I just didn't get to put the talking points in there. But, it's also, rehashing older episodes. So if you guys are into it, that's good, but maybe you might not be. I don't know. Let me know. theoverheadwire@gmail.com. I remember when I was younger that I watched a lot of sitcoms and things like Seinfeld. They always had these clip shows, and I was never a big fan of them because I was like, oh, I already saw this, or I want a new episode, not something that's just a rehash of all the other stuff. Do you all remember that back in the day when they had these clip shows for comedy shows instead of doing an episode? I guess because they had like a contract for 32 episodes and they only recorded 31, so they had a clip show where they just put together all of the best bits from that season or something like that before maybe the end of the season, maybe as a reminder to go watch older shows. But things were different back then. You didn't have Netflix or ways to watch them. You had to go buy a box set if you didn't have it, those types of things. So, and Talking Headways, this is different than comedy. We're not, sometimes we have fun, but it's not like Seinfeld or anything like that. So anyways, let me know what you think of the clip show. I really had fun putting it together, and maybe we can do some other ones, just kind of clipping together some of the really interesting things that folks have said on certain topics. Okay. And I think I mentioned this last time, but we designed a new shirt, a t-shirt, or you can get a mug or a sticker or a poster of the design. For those who have been asking for some shirts, I'm going to put the Overhead Wire logo shirt out there if folks are interested in that. But this one is called Cars or Cholesterol, and I worked with Richard Wazinski about to put this together, and we workshopped it. And actually, if you go to his Instagram, he has a post up about kind of some of the sketches that we had going through before it came to a final design that he did. So we kind of went back and forth and thought about the heart and how that works, and the arteries and the cars and what the cityscape should look like. And I think we came up with a really good design, Cars or Cholesterol. So We're selling them at TeePublic, and I'll put the link in the show notes, but you can also get them at bit.ly/carsarecholesterol. And if you order one, let me know what color you get. I think I mentioned last time I'm really fond of the purple. I think I might order myself one of those purple ones. I have a black one, but maybe the purple is a good one too. And also, as you all know, we cover a lot of books. We have a lot of authors on the show, and we've partnered with bookshop.org as an affiliate. So if you buy a book through the Overhead Wire on Bookshop, a small amount of that purchase goes to us. We really appreciate when people do that. First, go to your local bookstore and order from them. Second, go to your local bookstore on Bookshop. Third, go to the publisher. And then fourth, if you get to that point, order through our book club at Bookshop, and we'd really appreciate it. Folks just ordered Stephen Higashida's Better Buses, Better Cities and Constructing Community by Jeremy Levine, which we had a really great podcast episode on that, two-parter, because it was so good. We kept talking for a long time. But yeah, so folks are still ordering books through the Bookshop Club, and I really appreciate that, because a couple of dollars for every sale goes to us, and that really helps out, so I can pay Sophia for editing Talking Headways. And like I said before, all the books we've ever discussed on the show with the authors are now in the shop, bookshop.org/shop/the Overhead Wire. That's bookshop.org/shop/the Overhead Wire. We really appreciate everybody going and checking it out. Even if you just go to check out the books that we actually had authors for, that's just a huge list of all the books that we've had authors on to talk about the show through the show. So check it out if you get a chance. This is episode 118. We're in session, and I really appreciate you all listening in. And before we get to the show, you can get this podcast wherever you find your podcasts, including Talking Headways, on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Overcast, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts. Like I said, wherever you get your podcasts. So thanks to people who subscribe through podcatchers. We really appreciate that. It's great that you guys keep coming back to the show each week. The 400th episode had a ton of listeners. Really appreciate that. It's awesome to see that, people come back every week to listen to the show. So thanks a lot. Okay, let's get to the meat and potatoes of the show. This is the news. Here are a few stories that piqued our interest from the newsletter over the last few weeks. As you all know, the newsletter is my main work product. It's not just T-shirts and scarves and all those other things, but people subscribe to the newsletter. And one of the best things is that they click on the things that they like the best, or the things that they want to learn about the most. And so we take the things that are the most clicked each week, and we find a way to kind of cover them for you here on the Monday show every other week or so. So there's a bunch of stuff. So if you want to try out a free trial of the Overhead Wire daily, feel free to do so. Go to theoverheadwire.com. We have free trial, no credit cards needed. You can go sign up, just your email address, and then after 2 weeks, you can unsubscribe, or you can actually get knocked down to the basic version, which gets three articles a day, 3 to 4 articles a day instead of the 30 or so, plus all the bonus stuff that we give in the main newsletter. But it's a really good deal to check out, and you get to read all the news. So do that if you get a chance. Okay, let's get to the news. Let's get to start talking about stuff. Okay, measuring national transportation insecurity. Previously unmeasured, researchers have found that 1 in 4 people in the United States have experienced transportation insecurity, meaning they don't have the means to move about freely in order to access jobs, healthcare, and other important destinations. More than half of people with incomes below the federal poverty line experience transportation insecurity, and it's specifically prevalent among Black and Hispanic communities. So this is by Alex Gouldworth in the Washington Center for Equitable Growth. So we actually had Alex Gouldworth and Alex Murphy on the show, episode 382, to talk about their work on transportation insecurity. And they developed a survey that they were going to use to figure out, how many people actually were transportation insecure. And they actually, put it together, and they've come out with a report, which is really cool. It's not cool that people are transportation insecure, obviously, but it's cool that we've quantified the amount of people who are transportation insecure. 1 in 4 people is a lot that have had some sort of transportation insecurity. 25% of all, 75% haven't, but that means 1 in 4 people have had some sort of transportation insecurity. And that's, basically what they're saying is that, if you feel like you can't afford to, get to a doctor, or can't afford to take a bus to, get to an appointment of some sort, or if you're afraid to ask your friends, or you feel embarrassed to ask your parents or a family member to do it because you're worried that you asked them too many times, that's a transportation insecurity as well. So it's a really interesting research that they've done, and I really, really appreciate the work that they've put into it. And another interesting finding that they had, actually, that I should mention, is that car ownership doesn't actually guarantee security if the owners can't afford insurance or fuel. So it's not just about people being able to get a ride or take transit or even bike or any of those things. It's actually about transportation writ large. And so even if you have a car, you can be transportation insecure because you can, it's stuff's expensive, and I guess with inflation, stuff's even more expensive. So that's something that they've actually put into research, and I'm sure they'll do more. So if you haven't checked it out before, Alex and Alex's work, I highly recommend it. We'll post a link in the show notes to the episode 382, as well as the research that they've done for that that's posted at the Washington Center for Equitable Growth. Okay. Forced flood buyouts and breaking up neighborhoods. In Houston, the Allen Field neighborhood has flooded 12 times in the last 40 years, and residents are now subject to mandatory buyouts to keep it from happening again. On top of concerns about the displacement of the close-knit community, residents find the buyout process to be complicated and full of surprises, including extra closing costs and red tape. This was by Amal Ahmed in Grist. I looked up this area on the map, and it's south of where I lived in Houston. A lot of the houses were already built up on stilts, and many weren't, actually. If you look at the aerial photo, it's over by, I think, Bray's Bayou. And in Houston, the bayous are set up so that they funnel water away from, neighborhoods and towards, more the waterways to get the water out to the Gulf of Mexico. But a lot of times there's these neighborhoods that are, this neighborhood specifically, it's kind of a forested neighborhood, and it's kind of low lying. And so, originally, if you had this type of weather event and nobody really lived there, so you'd probably have this be kind of a flood area that would contain the water before it got to other places. But then they'd built housing on it, and it floods fairly often. And like I said, 12 times in 40 years, that's not a 100-year floodplain. It floods a lot because it was probably meant to flood from, historically from the geographic way that the land just shook out. But I think we think a lot about things in terms of climate change and flooding and managed retreat for those as a solution to those things. And I think managed retreat can have a positive outcome long term because it continues to allow people not to live in these places, especially if you have these buyouts. But the short-term impacts seem to be devastating, especially to a community like this one. And it can take away your neighbors. And if the programs are right, people might come out poorer on the other side of the buyout, as they mentioned in this story specifically, as one of the women who actually moved to my neighborhood where I grew up. After being here, and she mentioned, she could afford it because she'd saved up money, and also there were some surprise things like closing costs and things that would have, would have caused trouble for other people. So, you can't just give people $150,000 to buy a new house, and they buy a new house for $150,000, but then it doesn't cost $150,000. It actually costs $160,000 because you have to pay $10,000 to whatever else for the closing costs for pay the brokers and all that stuff. So. Pay for inspections and whatever else. So, there's like a lot of these costs that get lumped in there. And, if the buyout doesn't cover that, that might be trouble. And so you left your neighborhood, or you were forced to leave your neighborhood in this instance where there was a forced buyout, which is a good thing because you don't want people to keep getting flooded and have all the, long-term repercussions of flooding, which are there's many negative things like, black mold and that type of stuff. But on the other side of it, you need to make sure that these programs actually are set up for people to succeed in the long term, because otherwise, people are going to have a bad taste in their mouth, and they might not actually vote for people who want to have, who make this decision easier. So, interesting findings there from Grist and Amal Ahmed. Really interesting stuff, especially when we're talking about climate change a lot. Okay, next up. Nashville's main streets too dangerous for retail? In Nashville, developers have decided to build retail frontage on the interior part of a block for a major redevelopment project instead of Gallatin Road, an arterial street. Because of pedestrian safety issues along with noise, pollution, and lack of transit connection, developers felt the dense commercial space located on the corridor wouldn't be viable in a campus-type setting with pedestrianized streets. This was by Connor Darvani in Nashville Scene. This was really interesting because I found this and I posted in the newsletter, and people were interested in it. But one of the things that I was just really interested in is because you don't see developers doing this that much. They take properties on arterial streets because the arterial street, it's a frontage and everybody's going to see the property because they drive by so much. And so it's kind of like, instant advertising. But for this instance, they felt like the street corridor was, too fast. It was too dangerous for pedestrians. It wasn't a place where people wanted to be unless you were just driving, 50 miles an hour in your car. And so they wanted to take this like large, it was actually like a tech, not a technical college, where people learn certain things. And so it was like this big campus space, or at least a plot of land. And so it was actually a block in, plus the property that's on Gallatin Road, which is a major arterial there. And so they want to build this like mixed use, walkable retail destination inside in the interior, and not towards the arterial, because it's safer and it can, they can create open streets, and they can create this kind of ambiance that they want to, a pedestrian friendliness that they couldn't on the arterial street. And I think that's just fascinating that developers are starting to think this way. And I'm wondering actually if it would change the neighborhood overall, or change other neighborhoods in Nashville or other cities when they start thinking about what they're going to do to redevelop certain corridors. Obviously zoning and single family zoning protects the interior of neighborhoods, but once zoning starts to change in cities around the country like it is now, you might see this happen more, where more of the actual activity in the neighborhood is going to be on the interior rather than in the exterior by the arterial streets. And I think that's something that people have been talking about a lot in the last couple of years because of the way that we've designed, cities and zoned cities in the past. And, there's been a lot of complaints that why are you putting all the, the dense housing on these arterial streets, which are full of obviously car pollution and particulates and those types of things, and saying that those people deserve, those people that are living in those houses deserve to be able to be away from those types of pollutants and that type of traffic and noise and all that stuff. Just because you live in a dense housing complex doesn't mean you need to be exposed to a lot of the negatives around it. So it's an interesting kind of juxtaposition, and I wonder how much further this is going to go. But very cool, very interesting. I hope that it kind of takes off and more places are able to move towards the interior and get more walkable, get more interesting that way. Okay. Fayetteville's pre-approved pattern books. The Fayetteville, Arkansas City Council is considering approving a contract with architects to create a pattern book of pre-designed homes that would allow development proposals to be fast-tracked through the city's residential permit process. The designs aren't required, but will be pre-vetted by neighbors and reduce development costs for both the homeowner and construction companies. Stacy Ryburn in Northwest Arkansas Democrat Gazette. So this is something that the new urbanists have always discussed and even put together for their developments and neighborhoods and things like that. And in one way, it's good to have something that people can build that will float through the permit process and through the NIMBY process and all that stuff. On the other hand, it's kind of boring to have a set of the same old buildings in a cookie cutter fashion. I guess it would save money, and that's good, but it also feels a little bit overly prescriptive and a way to kind of homogenize design in a certain area. So I think it's a good idea if, we're looking to build a ton of housing and, you're just like, hey, this is already approved. You can build it spec right now, no problems. Just take the plans and go and do it. I think a lot of developers and folks will jump on it. But at the same time, it's like, I don't know, making this one design, the one, or even four designs, or, it's not just one design, obviously, but it's going to be a number of them. Put together a pattern book so that people can actually, get through that process, the development process. My thing would be, let's make the development process easier. So there's, obviously it conforms to building codes. Obviously housing has to do those types of things, but I think the design review process in a lot of cities is dumb. We really need to kind of open up. I mean, think about all the places that are built now that wouldn't be built because if there was a design review board. I'm sure that people in the 1900s here in San Francisco, and I know not everybody likes Victorians, but maybe they would have not liked Victorians. I don't know, something along those lines. So we seem to forget kind of in the past when people would have hated certain things that changed lives to a certain extent. And some things shouldn't have changed and some things should change. And it's going to happen one way or another. I think places like New York, Boston, Philadelphia, those cities have changed many times over time. And I think, until they got frozen in amber because of zoning codes, I think that the dynamism was a value and not a negative. So pattern books, I don't know, I could kind of take them or leave them, but it's an interesting idea anyways. Why all the intersections in Kansas City are the worst. In August, a user in the Kansas City subreddit asked what road intersection of this in the city was the most cursed. The short list included 40 intersections that are poor in safety and lack good infrastructure for pedestrians. Kansas City pedestrian bicycle advocates say that this is a symptom of a larger problem of streetscapes that cater to cars. This is by Salisa Kalakal and Savannah Hawley at KCUR. KCUR has had a couple of really good articles lately, so I really appreciate that the local, the local NPR stations and the public radio, et cetera, are really picking up some of this traffic safety stuff. There's cursed intersections in every city, and I think it's frustrating for a lot of people in different places that this continues to happen. There's actually an article today that we posted in the newsletter from Wisconsin, where the state DOT was really getting in the way of making changes that were promote safety because they were all about throughput. And I think this is the same problem they're having in Kansas City. It's the same problem they're having in San Antonio, where the city wants to make some changes and cut down, do a road diet and make 4 lanes out of 6 and actually add some bike lanes and stuff. But the governor of Texas, who's a right asshole. He decided he didn't like that, and so he told his transportation commissioner to nip it in the bud. And the one of the DOT mucky mucks in Texas actually got up at the Texas Tribune Festival this weekend, and thanks to reporting from Megan Kimball, who we're going to talk to on Thursday, and others, basically said he thinks safety is kind of a nice to have, and that throughput for cars is more important. And in not so many words, I'll find the quote somewhere, and I'm sure it'll circulate eventually in some reporting. But that's really ridiculous. I think safety should be number one. And I mentioned this too in talking about Valencia Street here in San Francisco, where they're going to do this center design with flex posts in the street. That's really not safe at all. I really, really am frustrated that, engineers get away with this type of design. And one of my solutions, and I think it's a bit, maybe it's a bit much, but I feel like if you have one of these designs and you're an engineer and you sign off on this thing, and then somebody, gets injured or gets killed on the street that you design, you should have to, maybe you should get your license revoked, because we're trying to design streets for safety, for people to live. We're killing 40,000 people a year on our streets. And so there's something that needs to change. It's car design. Obviously the cars and the trucks are getting too big. The speed is a problem. The design is a problem. And I think that is something that we can really fix. But I know that that's never going to happen. Nobody's ever going to fire an engineer, unfortunately. Or maybe I shouldn't say never, because that's the kind of thinking that's going to continue the problem. But we really should have them be accountable for these designs. And if somebody, maybe you go before a jury of your peers, and if they say your design is bad and then you build it anyways, you can get your license revoked and never be able to design another street, another bike lane again, because it was a dangerous design and everybody knew it was. So I honestly, I know that there's a lot of complaints from merchants. I know there's a lot of complaints from drivers, but they're not the people that are almost getting doored on Valencia and other streets around the country. And it's really frustrating that people's safety is being sacrificed for, a little bit more convenience, and maybe a couple seconds more convenience in some cases. Let's keep people safe. Okay, next up, warehouses in the fields. Ontario, California has transformed from what was once one of the largest clusters of dairy farms in the world to a city of warehouses, changing the politics, job market, air quality, and previous way of life. The city is now home to more than 600 warehouses, and more are planned. This was by Manvi Singh in The Guardian. This was a really long piece. It was a long read. It was really good. I think that one of the things that was most interesting about it to me was that all this agricultural land that has been taken over by not just like warehouses and warehousing for kind of the just-in-time economy with Amazon and all those things, but like housing sprawl, general sprawl. So this is often, this is warehouse sprawl to a certain extent, and it's partially because you've built all these single-family homes between the places where the main city of Los Angeles and other cities around it, Pasadena, et cetera. And then you've built all this sprawl out to Ontario. And, in between there, it's possible that you could have had more warehouses, but you have single family sprawl instead. And so instead of being compact with our land uses, we're actually making things worse. And so the reason why those 600 warehouses are going out there is because there's all these single family homes that are demanding service from the just-in-time economy, the Amazons of the world. The land use is the problem. And actually there's a piece today in the Wall Street Journal that was talking about how there's just not enough land. There's just not enough land for housing anymore because, it's getting so expensive that it's making housing super expensive. And this is a problem writ large with our economy overall. And it gets to another thing that I think maybe I'll discuss on the next show, I imagine, because it's one of the articles that we posted in the last couple of days. But economy is actually, might be a declining, over time because so many special interests get involved, which includes NIMBYs and land use regulations and those types of things. So there's not an ability to be dynamic, but we'll talk about that in the future. I imagine, I'm guessing that it will be one of those things that comes back up on the Monday show, and hopefully we'll get somebody like Chrissy or Tracy or somebody to come on and talk about that in more detail, because I think those are really interesting discussions to have. Okay. Good luck playing Sim NIMBY. A lot of planners go into planning because of the blockbuster video game SimCity. One of the more beautiful things about the game was its simplicity, though it did leave out parking and vibrant mixed-use possibilities that makes cities great. To show frustrations with today's planning processes and opposition, two friends decided to make the opposite version, Sim NIMBY. Click on any area inside the game, and the only answer that you get from the resident Sims is no. This was by Aaron Gordon, one of our favorites in Motherboard. There's also, one of the famous things about SimCity is they had these kind of advisors that would tell you, like, what you needed to do with water or traffic or whatever, the commissioner, police or whatever. And then they have like little NIMBY sayings and stuff in there too. But I must say it's like, it's kind of a simple game. It's not even a game. It's just kind of a website that you click on and it says no. But it gets the point across, I think. Okay, now I got three more little pieces, just ones that I'm going to do real quick. They weren't, top clickers, but they were interesting to me, and I thought they were important. Due to the number of vacant storefronts in downtown Denver, a number of businesses are getting free rent and marketing money for 3 months from the city's pandemic relief fund. The Downtown Denver Partnership is trying to give businesses the ability to test the waters, and landlords appreciate the extra foot traffic that wouldn't have come to their businesses next door. This was by Colorado Public Radio. Yeah, there's one of the things that really bothers me about here in Noe Valley specifically is there's a lot of empty storefronts at the moment. And one actually up the corner from my street is like, it's a really cool building. It's a nice glass frontage, and it would really make a really cool gallery, or my dream is to actually take the Lionel trains that my dad and I have, and now it's in storage for the moment. But take them and build a train table in that storefront and just kind of make something fun. I don't know. It would be fun to kind of have the kids come by and see the trains, and maybe hop in the shop when we're in there working on it or whatever on the weekends and whatever. But it seems like it would be a lot of fun. So I wish there was more opportunities for this kind of pop-up stuff. And I think that this is a really good idea by the Downtown Denver Partnership to actually try to activate some of the space downtown because of the pandemic. Okay, Minneapolis became the third city in the U.S. to pass a Ship at Zero resolution aimed at reducing emissions from maritime shipping sources. The resolution asks big companies to disclose shipping emissions and adopt emissions-reducing practices such as wind-assisted propulsion and slower speeds. So cities have a lot of power in trying to reduce emissions, and it's not just from transportation, general kind of like your cars must be electric and those types of things, but there's little things like make sure that the companies that are shipping things through the oceans are trying to be cleaner, and purchase only procure things like lunches for the meeting. From caterers who are green and those types of things. So procurement is actually one of the things, one of the episodes from Giacomo Lozzi at Polis in Europe. He actually came on the show to talk about the sustainable procurement paper that he put together. We actually had a clip from him on episode 400 because I just thought that was so interesting. But a lot of the ways that cities can reduce their carbon footprints are kind of under the radar, and I think that this is one of them. So a Ship at Zero resolution. There's only 3 other cities. I think LA and another city are the ones, and Minneapolis are the ones that have this kind of a resolution. So I hope more cities follow suit. Okay, and finally, urban design rules and regulations that require businesses such as cannabis dispensaries to cover their windows are against the spirit of good urbanism, taking eyes off the street and diminishing the pedestrian experience. In Canada, more than 3,200 of these cannabis stores have opened in the last 4 years, creating blank walls all over cities that need to be addressed. So this was in the Winnepeg Free Press. Yeah, I feel like that's an important point. I think the dark store movement is one of those things, and this I guess what happens in cannabis stores in Canada is where they don't have their windows open, or they're not allowed to show what's inside, and so it creates this blank wall. And everybody knows from Jane Jacobs and everybody else that blank walls are no good for urbanism. And so there's got to be a way to kind of be better with your fenestration, or be better with your design, or at least what you show people through the windows. But don't make it a blank, empty wall. Even murals on walls are sometimes they're beautiful, but sometimes just not having that kind of interaction with the window and like people in the other side of the window and those types of things actually takes away from the urban experience. In my opinion, don't get me wrong, I love murals and sidewalk drawings and stuff like that. I think it's really important, but if they go on for too long, I think it breaks up the street to a certain extent, and that's not as good. But this is even worse. I mean, blank walls, because of the cannabis stores, basically they're covering up their windows so that you can't see inside because of, I guess, adult activities that are legal but still regulated are going on. But I think that there's something to be said for good urban design. Well, this week and every week, I want to thank our generous Patreon supporters. You guys are awesome and keep the show going by listening and supporting each month. The show, Talking Headways, really wouldn't be here without it, so thank you very much. And you can support the show by going to patreon.com/theoverheadwire. We've had people sign up each month during the pandemic, so we're super appreciative of that. $2 a month will get you some stickers and a handwritten note. $10 a month will get you our bus-only scarf. A lot of folks signing up at the $5 level. I had somebody today, I think, sign up at the $1 level. So I really appreciate anything that you want to support the show with. We really appreciate it. Or buy some scarves. That supports the show too. So we have the scarves, we have the shirts, we have bookshop.org. Everything that is out there is there to support the show, support Talking Headways, support Mondays at the Overhead Wire and the Overhead Wire newsletter as well. So like I said, the bus scarves, we have a bunch of the bus ones. We have a bunch of the bike ones. They've been selling very well. People have been really liking them, especially the bike only scarves. I'm starting to wonder if I should have ordered more, but before Christmas comes, and folks are always looking for presents for their friends, especially if you work in a transportation department. Last year, I had a number of folks give out scarves for Christmas presents to their staff and things like that. So, really cool idea for folks who might be thinking of hey, what's something that we can get folks at the office, especially if you work in an urban planning capacity. I think that's a fun way to celebrate. So, you can get the bus only scarf for yourself if you go to patreon.org and sign up at the $10 a month level, or you can do so by purchasing one of the scarves on our website, theoverheadwire.com. It's the first square on the left is where all the scarves can be found. So check those out. Obviously, we've got the bike only checkerboard, fading checkerboard, which is really cool. It's a really popular one. And then also the bus only scarf, the classic bus only scarf. So check it out if you get a chance. Also, if you get a chance, go to RaymondUnwin.com. We did an audiobook of Raymond Unwin's 1909 classic, Town Planning and Practice. We did a free chapter for episode, I believe, 200. If it wasn't 200, it was definitely 300. So go. Actually, 200 was Urbanism of a Way of Life by Lewis Worth, and 300 was Raymond Unwin's Town Planning and Practice. So check those out. But yeah. It was a fun book to produce. Again, it's, if you're a history of planning fan, it's one of those books that you have to read and check it out if you get a chance. Okay, listener questions and comments. If you have a comment or question, feel free to tweet at us or comment on any of the social sites where the podcast appears. That's LinkedIn, Twitter. I think it shows up on Facebook and other places. So check it out and make some comments if you wish to. Or you can send me an email, theoverheadwire@gmail.com. I love hearing from you all. Especially lately, we've been getting some really good, feedback and really great discussions, especially about episode 400. And, that was really fun to put together. And I really appreciate you guys posting, and listening to the show and posting about it every time. It's really appreciated. So I'm looking forward to the next 100 episodes. And I'm trying to think of something big for 500. I'm not sure what we're going to do, but if you have any ideas, send them to me. And like you said, if anybody else wants to share how they got into cities, feel free to send me a note, theurbanwire@gmail.com. We'll read them out on the air, all that stuff. Really appreciate it. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Okay, Puppies and Butterflies. This is part of the show where we talk about something fun, interesting, or maybe just didn't fit in the other sections. So, in celebration of their 50th anniversary, BART had a short fiction contest based on the topic of motion. 30 finalists were chosen, including Talking Headways listener Edward Giordano, who wrote a story called Louita Goes to Get Her Cat. And I won't tell you any of the details of the story, but you got to go read this. It's really good. It's a super fun story, and I hope folks go and check it out with all the other stories as well. There were 30 finalists. You can get them at certain BART stations in the kiosks, or you can get them online as well. I'll have a link in the show notes in case folks want to check it out for a short, fun read. They're short stories, so they're definitely worth going in and checking out, even if you just read one a day. Edward sent me his, and I read it right away. It took me no time at all, and maybe because it was a good story, it took me no time at all, but I really appreciated that. It was really fun. I don't want to give anything away, so go check it out if you get a chance. And super fun idea. I love that BART does this stuff. I love when we have some positive news to share and fun stuff. Puppies and Butterflies. That's perfect. Puppies and Butterflies. This is actually Kitties and Butterflies from Edward's perspective. So I appreciate that. Thanks, Edward, for writing that. Thanks, BART, for putting it together. And I hope folks go and check it out. Okay. Well, you can find me on Twitter at The Overhead Wire or at theoverheadwire.com. Thank you so much for joining us at Mondays at The Overhead Wire. Thanks to our generous patrons for sponsoring this week's podcast and Talking Headways. And we'll see you next time.
Talking